Hello and welcome to this episode of the Buried Rat Podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about art, and I have redone this episode about 3 times already, so I'm going to try and get through it a little bit faster and less yappy, for lack of a better word. I wrote down, bullets, well, not bullet points, but a pretty semi-detailed list. So we're just going to kind of go down the line. First, what is art? And I think that's really the overarching question. What is it? I don't think anyone can really come to a perfect consensus on what it means because it means so many different things to so many different people. The definition I found online from Encyclopedia Britannica said, art, a visual object or experience consciously created through an expression of skill or imagination. There's another definition I saw that said it was like human activities used to express thoughts and emotions or something like that. And I think those are both pretty accurate of that. We use art as a way to express ourselves, whether it's for our own purposes or if it's for an audience. Art can be kind of whatever you want it to be. And I am in this honors English literature class, and my professor was just like, what does art mean to you? And everyone gave a different answer, which I think just kind of shows that art has such a broad definition and it could really mean anything to anyone. Moving on through the rest of the definition, it said the term art encompasses diverse media such as painting, sculpture, printmaking, drawing, decorative arts, photography, and installation, which are all obviously valid types of art. I think most people, when they hear the word art, are thinking visual arts or something tangible and physical that they can look at. So paintings, drawings, sculpture, like it said. Those types of things I think are what most people think of when they hear art, but it also extends to so many other things. Just some of the ones I wrote down. Music. I love music as an art form now, and I did not get to appreciate it as much as I really should have until really recently. I think it's because of the commercialization of music a lot of the time. Not to say that commercial music can't still be artistic, but it definitely has a kind of undertone of the only reason you made this was for money. So do you actually care about what you're saying? Is what's coming out of your mouth and these lyrics, do they actually mean anything to that artist? Or is it just something that they know is inoffensive and will be able to make sales? So yeah. But music on top of that, there's also you have your purely instrumental music. So if someone plays saxophone really well, and like it said, skill and imagination, or a human activity, you can express skill and imagination through playing the saxophone or trumpet or piano or whatever other instrument. There's also singing, even humming, yodeling. So many things you can do with your voice are forms of art as well. I think writing, which also kind of goes back into music, lyricism, poems, longer works like books or epic poems, those types of crazy gigantic works, can both express obviously what the author's feeling or what their thoughts are on certain topics, but also the culture as a whole, which I have loved in my English class, is that we talk about what is the historical context behind this piece and why did they say these things the way they did. There's also, I think architecture can be a form of art, which sounds crazy, but when you if you're an architect and you're building something, you have a set of constraints, and then you have creativity within those constraints of, I think there should be a bedroom here, or I think this building should have whatever, garage next to it, or I think in like where I live here, in Tuscaloosa, there's a lot of buildings with parking garages underneath, which is something that I didn't like know you could do, but just like having the rest of the building on stilts and then a parking garage underneath, is a really creative, in my opinion, use of that space. Of instead of putting a parking lot next to it and sacrificing the space of the building, you just put it underneath and you have the same footprint. There's also fiber arts, which I'm gonna have to, I don't know if I know the definition, to be honest, of what fiber arts is. What I think it is just anything to do with like yarn, fabrics, textiles type thing. So like, I think crocheting, knitting, spinning yarn, like making sweaters and blankets and stuffed animals, those types of things, I think are all fiber arts, if I'm not mistaken. But those obviously are, done as creative expressions, or can be done as creative expressions. They can also be used as like gifts, or you can sew little messages into things. Or I know people have had their like grandparents sew them blankets when they were a kid or something like that. Like that definitely is a form of like love, and you're expressing that love in the form of art. There's fashion design, which I feel like takes the fiber arts even further, where you have these textiles being created, and then with fashion design, you think of how do we make this like flashy? How do we make it flattering, or provocative, or just eye-catching and attention-drawing? Like, there's so many different ways you can go about it. And then lastly, I think there's performance and theater arts, which can go in a lot of different directions, like musical theater. There's like, classical like theater where you're just talking and acting out. There's even, to an extent, like thinking about a lot of like YouTubers when that was like a big thing, a lot of that is acting. They're putting on appearances for a camera. Obviously there's actors in movies as well, TV. There's voice actors. All those different things, you are expressing, that skill and that imagination. And next is something that was on that Encyclopedia Britannica article, was the difference, and what I want to say is kind of a Venn diagram between utility and aesthetics. A lot of art is actually very utilitarian, which I did not think of when I took IB art in high school, and like everything I made, I was like, this just has to look good. Like, it has to be something that someone's going to look at. And that was like the only thought really running through my head. But there's a lot of utility that can be had in art as well. Especially thinking about those fiber arts. When you make a blanket, the purpose of a blanket is to keep someone warm. The purpose of like shirts and pants is to keep people warm, to block out the cold, but it can also, at the same time, be an expression of what that person's like, beliefs or opinions are sometimes. Like if a shirt has a certain slogan on it or whatever, that can be an expression, and the person who made that could have had that art in mind when they were making it, of I want this to connect to people who also believe this. Or also thinking about materials. If you're doing like ceramics, maybe you're using a clay that's from a specific part of Peru that you visited or something. There's probably clay in Peru, I don't know. But like if you use a certain material, that can also be artistic because it has meaning to you. So there's that difference. And then also, like, I was thinking, when you like go to just any type of store, like a Walmart or something, where they're selling cups and mugs, especially a mug, they have a lot of, I have to kind of think about like the difference between utility and aesthetics. For me, when I like moved and I had to buy my own like what would you call that, like cups and stuff. I don't know. Dishes, that's the word I was looking for. When I had to buy my own dishes, I wasn't looking for something that was like beautiful and like something that I would keep forever. I was looking for something that would be cheap and I was looking strictly for utility. I just want a cup. I don't need the cup to say anything. I don't need it to have like a beautiful handle. I don't need it to have any characters or logos on it. I just want a cup. But there's also people who make or are buying and looking for things that have that really high aesthetic value to them, of like maybe they want and that's also kind of the word like artisanal, where that's coming from, of like it's meant for artistic purposes, of they want that cup because it was made by a certain person and they know that they put a lot of time and care into making it. Yeah. Next is iconography. So iconography is basically like symbolism, and there's a lot of symbolism in art, especially like, again, like I said, visual arts. Pretty much everything in visual arts is a symbol for something, of like, a lot of the time I would use color symbolism, of like I'm using red to represent anger, or blue to represent sadness, or, so on and so forth. Just thinking of like, I said that and I immediately thought of, the movie Inside Out, where all the characters are a certain color because it represents something. Yellow was joy. So anytime there was something yellow, it's associated with joy. And I think that's a really interesting concept, and I love it. There's a bunch of other forms of iconography, like, similes, metaphors, and the literary arts, so in writing. What else? There's, of like, maybe someone has like a religious affiliation to something and they put like, fish on it, or they put a cross on thing. Like, yeah, a cross symbolizes Christianity, but like just a crucifix is not, you know what I mean? You're using that specific part of Christianity to be a symbol for the rest of it, without having to explicitly have a picture of Jesus and a Bible and like 12 other things. You can a symbol can work to condense down a really complex idea into one thing. Yeah. Next, sorry, I keep checking the time because I'm really running out of time. Next is, why do people make art? And I think the biggest reason why people make art is, again, like that personal expression sort of thing. Although it is interesting, there is kind of that question of, is art like inherently selfish? Of like, when you're making art, you're trying to express yourself a lot of the time. So what does that say about us as humans, that we don't necessarily care what other people think? Or, well, we do, but like, you know what I mean? Like, we want to make art for ourselves for the most part. Like, that's, a lot of people will be like, you don't have to like it, but I made the art for myself. So, is that selfish? That's its own kind of question. I don't think so, but I think a lot of people probably would. There's also, like, there's political reasons. There's, like, a lot of art has been done as an act of protest. Just thinking about, like, the whole, like, hippie counterculture type thing, that any music, any, like, art made around then, like, protesting Vietnam, that's, like, a lot of what, art is. It's just to, like, be against something else sometimes, or to be very pro something. Yeah, and then, I am really running out of time. Okay, reaction to art. Like I said, not everyone's gonna like art, so it's important as someone who creates art to, like, understand that, but at the same time, I think as viewers and consumers of art, it should be our job to kind of understand why. I think there's that quote of, like, disturb the comfortable, what is it, comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable, where a lot of art, again, like, that's made in protest, it should make you think. You shouldn't be comfortable when you see it initially. Yeah, anyway, I'm running out of time, so that's all for today. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe. Bye-bye.